Dominus vobiscum,
et cum spiritu tuo,
sic ventia sancti evangelii, secundum
gloria tibi Domine.
cum natus esset Iesus in Bethlehem Iudae, in diebus Herodis regis.
ecce magia oriente venirunt Hierosolima dicentes ubi est qui natus est rex
Vidimus stella meus in oriente, et venimus cum muniribus ad orare Dominum.
Adiens autem, Herodes rex turbatus est, et omnis Hierosolima humilo. Et congregans omnes principes sacerdotum et scribas populi, siscitabat abis, ubi Christus nascerit.
At illi dixerunt
In Bethlehem Judae, sic in scriptum est, per profeta.
et tu Bethlehem terra Iuda, nec vacua minima eis, in principibus Iuda.
Ex elim etiet lux, qui ridat populum meum Israel. Tum Herodes, clam vocatis magis diligenter didicita Deis, tempus terque apparuit.
Et mittens illos in Bethlehem dixit.
Ite, ed interrogate diligente de tuam, et cum inveniris renunciate mihi, ut et ego veniens ad orem meum, qui cum audiem abiunt.
Et ecce stella quam viderat in oriente, antecedebat Deus usquedum veniens, staret supra, ubi irat puer.
Videntes autem stellam, Davisis und Gaudium magno valde. Et intuiuntes
Hello, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we are going to be discussing UFOs, aliens, and a particular book that was recommended to me by a friend of mine named Johnny McIvor on Twitter. He told me that if I was interested in this recent alien and UFO phenomenon, to check out the book Dulce Base, The Truth and Evidence from the Case Files of Gabe Valdez, or Valdez, however you want to say it. So we're going to get into that. It's brand new for me. I've never looked into it. It's all going to be fresh, so we're going to be exploring it. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't read it, we're going to be exploring it for the first time together tonight. And we're going to be talking about the potential Project Bluebeam style Psyop of some kind of grand UFO or alien invasion type of disclosure that seems to be hinted at, or seems to be being pushed by the mainstream media and the government, especially over the last couple months. We have numerous different articles to show you what I'm talking about here, how this UFO narrative is being pushed more and more lately. Here we have from BBC News, January 13th of this year. They published UFO reports by U.S. troops skyrocket to over 500. Let me make this bigger here. A new declassified U.S. government report on UFO sightings by U.S. troops has revealed hundreds of new cases. The U.S. National Intelligence Office is now aware of 510 reported sightings, an increase of over the 144 compiled in the spy agency's first 2021 assessment. Nearly half of the new sightings were deemed unremarkable and attributed to human origins. But what about the other half? More than 100 of the encounters remain unexplained. Then here we have an article from The Guardian. The U.S. urged to reveal UFO evidence after claim that it has intact alien vehicles. Whistleblower, former intelligence official, says government possesses intact and partially intact craft of non-human origin. Then, just in the last couple days, we have a report from the Los Angeles Times. Headline: They're 100% not human. Las Vegas police investigate reports of extraterrestrial sightings. Big, shiny eyes, towering nearly 10 feet tall, 100% not human. Aliens. That's the 911 call that came into dispatchers last month from a Las Vegas area resident reporting extraterrestrial life in his backyard, just about an hour after local police witnessed an object falling from the sky. The paranormal investigation by police did not turn up any answers. Then, another related story. New concerns over threats from space revealed in latest U.S. classified document leak. April 27th, 2023. Look at this goofy simulation. Still image from a recent simulation outlining a potential attack on Taiwan from China's Air Force and Naval Forces illustrates the potential for threats from space and other domains. Then, Dillbob donating $10. Thank you, Dillbob. God bless, brothers and sisters. Hope all is well. All is quite well. Thank you, Dillbob. Oh yeah, I should mention, since somebody gave me a super chat, YouTube doesn't allow me to monetize my channel, so I can't take super chats through YouTube. But there is a link in the description to make super chats through Streamlabs, and I really appreciate anything you guys have to give. That really makes a difference. I appreciate it. Another related headline, Canada, from the CBC. Canada attends first of its kind UFO briefing at the Pentagon. This posted June 7th, 2023, another recent story. Amid extraordinary new claims, U.S. office delivers its first briefing to allied nations. A NASA panel studying what the government calls unidentified aerial phenomena, commonly known as UFOs, held its first public meeting. Then, our final headline to look at, just to give the brief context here of why people have been concerned about this lately. NASA launch mission to prevent internet apocalypse, which could bring broadband blackout for months. NASA's Parker Solar Probe has successfully traversed solar winds, gathering valuable insights and information into the sun's workings in a bid to prevent a potential internet apocalypse which would leave the Earth without broadband. So, what is being hinted at by the mainstream seems to be a potential for some kind of global alien invasion, some kind of global disclosure of the presence of extraterrestrial life on Earth, and maybe, as part of this operation, we could see an internet blackout for potentially months. That would keep meddling people like us from talking about it and unraveling their psyops. So let me look at the chat before I continue on here. We've got Happa Perspective in the chat. Good to see you. Looks like Southern Nordic might have been in the chat earlier too. Someone tagged him. Southern Nordic, if you're here, good to see you. Congratulations on everything going on with you. Murphy's Muskets says government has been using the alien psyop since the first War of the Worlds broadcast. That's very true. Now, I've made a thread on my personal opinion on the AQ, the alien question. I personally, my opinion is that aliens coming to Earth from some other solar system is physically impossible. Physically impossible. And we can talk about that later, get into the physics of it later. I don't want to make this entire stream about physics, but we could talk about that later after I get through all the material that I want to share with you. But yeah, that's my opinion. So if, assuming interstellar travel is physically impossible, if we are told by the government that extraterrestrial organisms are in contact with our world leaders, giving them technology, giving them potentially political and philosophical advice, since we would assume the average person has this image, this concept of the alien as being this hyper-advanced life form that we could stand to gain from learning their ways. If we have this sort of almost godlike concept of the alien, then of course, whatever advice they have to give us, even if it's not purely technological, even if it's some kind of social, political, religious advice, I'm sure that would be taken as sort of a new gospel for a lot of people. So if that happens, if the government comes out saying that, oh, we're in contact with aliens, they're giving us this great technology, they're telling us the perfect way for us to structure our government, structure our society, we need to listen to them, then I think the obvious conclusion that we should come to is that it's a psyop, that it's meant to socially engineer us, and that we're not being told the truth, obviously. So I wanted to show you this thread by a fellow named Drew Tang Reborn on Twitter, who also believes, along with me, that any kind of alien disclosure would be a psyop, and, as he puts it, the final push to a one-world government for the necessity of communicating with ETs, extraterrestrials. He says this is what is coming, and it won't be an invasion, it will be a revelation. They won't shoot you with lasers, they will rule kindly with their advanced technology and medicine, all the while slowly, silently depopulating you to zero. And he includes this Ronald
in our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
So that's the important part. Is
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat.
How quickly our differences would vanish. I think that's a lot of the space program, as I've discussed in the past, a lot of the space propaganda that we get from the government and from the media is meant to sort of consolidate our identity as human beings on planet Earth. Instead of being Germans living in Germany, Norwegians living in Norway, French people living in France, etc. We become humans living on Earth because our perspective is shifted to a planetary identity in contrast to the other planets, the other alien races out there. Hapa Perspective asks, can't we assume their physical science is far beyond what our knowledge of physics can comprehend? Once again, this goes into a fundamental discussion of science and physics and how we can understand reality. Not just science and physics, but intelligence. What is our intelligence? Is our intelligence limited? Or are we able to conceptualize reality as it is objectively? Can we use our intelligence? Can we use reasoning, critical thinking to understand basic concepts such as space so that we can take away an understanding that gives us certainty that certain ideas presented by modern mathematical physics are false? And I would say yes. I would say a rational, intelligent understanding of a concept like space can give us absolute certainty, 100% confidence that certain ideas like warped space-time, stretched space-time, wormholes through space-time, etc., are impossible. Okay, but let's discuss that later, because I'd have to bust out certain diagrams. We'd have to have a discussion of definitions. We'd have to have a discussion of intelligence. There's a lot that goes into how we can understand the world rationally so that we can, come to certain confident conclusions. But anyway, let's continue on with the thread. Drew says there are real physical craft, advanced technology, and a breakaway civilization that emerged after World War II. In 1947, Admiral Byrd and his fleet encountered them in Antarctica and had to end their Operation High Jump early. That same year in Roswell, New Mexico, one crashed. Okay, so he's saying, okay, yes, there is advanced technology that to the average person would appear extraterrestrial, but that it doesn't come from space. It doesn't come from another solar system or another planet. It comes from a technologically advanced breakaway civilization. Jason Reza Georgiani has talked about that in the past too. I like his work on the breakaway civilization. Here he talks about needles and rockets being science worship symbols. Here he discusses, no matter what you think about the shape of the Earth, we should all agree the moon landings were fake. We need to investigate Antarctica and Operation High Jump. UFOs exist, but there's no reason to believe they came from outer space. We need to explore the ocean floor and caves inner Earth before we spend another dime on Mars. I know a few people, very intelligent people, who believe that there are lands, regions of Earth that we're not told about. And I think that's a far more interesting concept than believing that there's aliens from another planet visiting us. Smogland says, unfortunately, complex physics, quantum mechanics, and all that stuff goes over my head. I am in the midwit tier. Well, I've discussed in the past, quantum physics is irrational. That's why it goes over your head, because it's not coherent. It's contradictory. It's irrational. It's based on pseudo-physical models that are basically treated in supernatural ways, and that, once again, is a whole other conversation on the physics issue that we can get into later if you guys want. But I really want to get to the book, the Dulce base book. Getting closer now, another tweet. So the biggest story in the UFO world since the 2017 NYT expose. I see whistleblower says the U.S. government is illegally covering up the possession of an intact craft, not of this Earth. here he quotes Zero Hedge. Ex-Russian space boss finds no proof that Americans landed on moon in 1969. He says almost like the whole thing was a ritual to get the masses to worship scientists and prepare them for the coming of a moon child. So, look into some of Drew Tang's work. He's a interesting Twitter user. But I was told by Johnny McIvor that this is the best place to go. The Dulce base book is the best place to go in discussing the alien question. So I was going to read some of this for you. I haven't read anything on this yet, so this is all new to me. And after reading a couple pages, I will check back with the chat, and we'll decide if we want to continue with this or discuss something else. So, preface. I'm not going to read the prelude or the prologue, because it's kind of just autobiographical. So, preface. Cat with the glasses. Haha, funny. Interesting stream. Just stumbled upon it. Well, welcome. Good to have you. Final limo ride says rational science is best. Glad to have another rational scientist in the chat. Preface of Dulce Base, The Truth and Evidence from the Case Files of Gabe Valdez. By the way, Gabe Valdez was a New Mexico State police officer and a Gaming Control Board investigator, most remembered for leading the criminal investigation into unsolved livestock mutilations in the 1970s in New Mexico. Interesting. My goal is to, because most people know, if you don't know, one phenomenon that a lot of UFO and alien investigators like to discuss is the idea of mutilated cattle. They bring up examples where cattle seem to have been mutilated in ways that are hard to explain. And of course, the explanation that the UFOers present is that aliens did it. So let's see what Valdez has to say about it. My goal is to provide you accurate, real information. I debated how to go about this. I have too much information in my garage to include it all here, but I wanted to provide as much free information as possible. While I apologize that I cannot provide the book for free because of all the time and resources involved in getting this information out, I will do everything I can to provide you access to my dad's case files. I decided the best way to do this would be to create a website. Okay, so the website is defunct. It just goes to a blank page. So let's just carry on. One of the tragic events of this book is the story of Paul Benowitz. Without spoiling the story, Paul's involvement led to the Air Force launching an exhaustive disinformation and intense surveillance campaign against him to discredit him, which included national security agencies involved in this story. This campaign by the Air Force, which included breaking into his house and moving his furniture around in attempts to drive him crazy, eventually worked, leading to his mental breakdown. Some people don't think the government does this kind of shit, but they definitely do. Some people are aware of Paul's story, and some are not. By the way, that reminds me of the Lauren Southern story. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Maybe we could talk about that later. But Lauren Southern's recent story about how she married a Fed and that the Fed left her with a mulatto or a mixed race child and allegedly completely ruined her life, where she was living in some kind of cabin in a trailer park. Some people are aware of Paul's story and some are not, so try to bear with me. If you read something you may already know, keep in mind that because I spent a lot of time with Paul and my dad, you are likely to find information here that many people familiar with his story are not aware of. The point being, if Paul would have made all of his information available to more investigators, the Air Force would have probably been less successful in ruining his life. My crazy idea is to provide as much information and evidence to as many people as possible. It is much harder for the Air Force or a national security agency to harass thousands of people to keep their secrets safe. It's much harder for them to track and follow everyone, but it is easier to follow and track a few. Currently, only a small handful of people have the majority of solid evidence, and that number is slowly dwindling. At least now, you will have access to the files of Gabe Valdez. The problem with this story is that no new information about Dulce is credible. When new information comes out, it is usually false or based on false rumors. There are plenty of stories about stories told by someone who may or may not exist. My goal is to set the record straight and document the evidence and findings that my dad was involved with during the last 36 years. These pages contain plenty of new information that has been presented to others in the past and simply ignored or misunderstood, as well as new information that has only recently been explained based on declassified documents. If you are new to this story, you are actually lucky, because you have not been tainted by the false stories that have circulated over the years, either intentionally by the government or unintentionally by other individuals throughout the years. If you are familiar with this story, I caution you against skipping over parts you might already be aware of. There is a chance that what you think you know might be different from what actually happened. Now, if you are ready, I have a story to tell you. Interesting. You gotta love stories of government intrigue and psyops and gaslighting and all that. Interesting stuff. Chapter 1. The Beginning. Vaporwave keeps trying to talk about Nick Fuentes. Why are you riding Nick Fuentes here? I don't think I've ever watched a single video on Nick Fuentes in my entire life. Urdar Brunner says, off topic, but I was doing some reading on the Axial Age and some interesting happenings in China at that time. Look up Mozi, of a tribe from West China. His philosophy was basically liberal humanism. Interesting. The goal was to unify China. The parallels with other coordinated events in more recent history is kind of spooky. Interesting. Okay, we're at the beginning of the story. Let's check the story out. It all began once upon a time on June 13th, 1976. Officer, let's make this a little bigger. Officer Gabe Valdez with the New Mexico State Police was enjoying a much-needed day off when the phone rang. On the other line was a local rancher and a store owner named Manuel Gomez. The Gomez family had homesteaded and actually named the town of Dulce, New Mexico, before the surrounding area was officially recognized as Jicarilla Apache Tribe, and even later the Jicarilla Apache Nation. In 1887, the federal government had finally given the Jicarilla, or Yicarilla, a reservation and a place to call home. The tribe relocated from Cimarron, New Mexico, to the current town of Dulce after the Gomez family had been there for several years prior to the arrival of the Jicarilla. The Gomez family had the only privately owned land within the boundaries of the Jicarilla reservation. "Hello, Manuel. What can I do to help you?" asked Valdez. "Gabe, I have a problem. A very strange problem. I hope you can help me. I don't know who else to call. I was at the ranch." Should I be saying this in a Mexican accent? "Hey, Holmes, I was at the ranch down by Mundo Lake, and I found one of these cows. One of my cows dead in the pasture." Gabe responded, "Calm down. I can get a hold of the Cattle Sanitary Board if you want. I can get a hold of the Cattle Sanitary Board for you if you want, since it's only a dead cow." "I think it involves more resources than the cattle inspector," Mr. Gomez continued. "And it is much more than just a dead cow. I wouldn't bother you unless it was important. I really need your help, and I need you to see this. I've been ranching all my life, and I've never seen anything like this before. I know you grew up on a ranch also, and you know cattle, and I'm afraid no one will believe me if I tell them." All right, I gotta stop the Mexican accent. It's too much. "What exactly happened at the ranch?" Gabe asked. "I went on to check the cows this morning, and while I was driving, I noticed a cow lying dead in the field. I went to check on it, and I noticed the cow seemed to be cut up in strange ways. The best way to describe it is that the cow seemed to be mutilated in some way. I've had cows killed by coyotes and predators, but predators didn't kill this cow. The cow was missing its reproductive organs. But that is not the only strange part. There were 3 circular impressions in the dirt that looked like some type of aircraft had landed close by, and there was some type of oily substance on the dirt, but I couldn't tell what it was. From the circular imprints, there were smaller imprints that seemed to go up to the cow. Gabe, I hope you don't think I'm crazy, but it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Can you help me?" Appa says bravo on the Cholo accent. I work with a lot of Mexicans. None of them talk that way, but you can kind of exaggerate it a little bit. It's funny. Anyway, it's too distracting to do that accent the whole time, so. Gabe says, "I don't think you're crazy. I've known you a long time. It does seem bizarre, but I'll do everything I can to help you. It's late, so there isn't much we can do now. Let me get a hold of the cattle inspector, and let's go out to your ranch early tomorrow. Let's make it 5 in the morning so we can try to figure out what's going on. If it's cattle rustlers or poachers, I want to treat it like a crime scene and process any evidence that we might find. I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Don't worry, we will figure this out." The next day they drove out to the location of the dead cow. Paul Riley of the New Mexico Cattle Sanitary Board accompanied them as they started to look around. When they arrived, they located and examined the carcass of a 3-year-old black, white-faced cow. The animal was lying on its side, and its left ear, tongue, udder, and rectum had been removed with what appeared to be a sharp, precise instrument. No traces of blood appeared on the cow's skin. The hide on its underside was white, so that spotting of blood would have been easily detected. Other evidence on the cow included a small puncture wound on the brisket. Manuel located his pickup's tire track from the prior day. "Look at this," he said. "There are more of those smaller circular tracks on top of my tire tracks from yesterday, and they go back to the cow. There's that oily substance I told you about on the phone last night, Gabe." As Gabe gathered evidence, he tried not to disturb the area until photographs could be taken. The three men concluded that Manuel must have interrupted whoever or whatever killed his cow, and it might be, this sentence doesn't make sense. Whoever or whatever killed his cow and it. Or they might have come back to finish what they had started, whatever it might be. Evidence indicated that whatever left the tripod marks returned to the animal and removed its left ear. They found tripod marks over Manuel's tire tracks from his visit the previous day, and the left ear was intact when he left to call Gabe and tell him about what he had found. Investigation at the scene showed that the small tripod marks followed the cow for approximately 600 feet. The cow's tracks showed where he had struggled and fallen. The small tripod tracks also surrounded the cow. The ground had been scorched, and they found a yellow, oily substance in 2 places under the tripod marks. They also noticed that the object that had left the tripod marks had landed on an old stump, and it looked like the mystery aircraft had almost tipped over when it landed. Photo 1. Tripod marks found at the first Gomez mutilation. Marks indicated some type of aircraft had landed near the animal. Photo 2. Another view of the triangular tripod marks found at the first Gomez mutilation. Photo 3. Mutilated cow with missing lip and ear. This later became one of the signs of a classic mutilation. After trying to process different scenarios to explain what they had witnessed, Gabe said, I've been getting several reports from people around town saying that they've been seeing a strange light in the sky at night. People say this light is orange, and it doesn't fly like a normal airplane or helicopter. They also say they've been seeing the light around Mundo Ridge, which isn't very far from here. I wonder if this has something to do with the cow. I've also been getting reports of unmarked helicopters flying around the area. After taking photographs and samples of the animal and the oily substance, the men returned to town to try and figure out what they had just witnessed. Both Gabe and Manuel made the comment that in all their years of combined ranching experience, they'd never seen anything like that. The cattle inspector was also at a loss. The 3 men tried to figure out possible scenarios to determine what had killed the animal. They had never seen predators kill an animal in such a way. The predators didn't explain the circular marks or the oily substance. Gabe considered the possibility of occult worship based on some of his previous experiences with some of the local Jicaria youth dabbling in devil worship. Those youth. Devil worshippers. The precision and accuracy of the cuts on the animal, in addition to the circular impression and remote location of the carcass, ruled out the possibility of local pranksters. Since none of the consumable portions of the animal were removed, they also ruled out the possibility of cattle poachers or rustlers. Later that night, Officer Valdez got in touch with a retired scientist from Sandia National Laboratories named Howard Burgess. He told him what happened, and Dr. Burgess agreed to come and look at the scene to see if he could explain what happened. 3 days later, Dr. Burgess arrived on the scene and conducted testing for radiation exposure. He found that the radiation level in and around the tripod marks was twice the normal background reading. Valdez asked Dr. Burgess, "Why is the radiation level double the normal level around the tracks?" Burgess responded, "Perhaps what we assume is an aircraft that appears to have landed next to the cow is either nuclear-powered or whoever killed this animal is intentionally trying to confuse investigators. I'm not aware of any aircraft at this time that is nuclear powered. That is a good question, and it's another answer we are going to have to try to figure out. It wasn't long before Officer Valdez received another call from Manuel Gomez. "Gabe, it happened again. I found another dead cow. I didn't find any circular impressions, but the cow had been mutilated like the first one. What the hell is going on?" Gabe told Manuel, "I'll be at your house in 5 minutes. Let's go to the ranch so we can gather evidence and take pictures." Manuel Gomez eventually lost 17 animals, including a horse. Investigators would later refer to these events as a classic mutilations. One of the more unnerving cases was that of a 2-year-old steer found dead several hundred yards behind Mr. Gomez's house. It was apparent that whatever left those circular imprints also had the ability to fly undetected without sound. At this particular mutilation, Mr. Gomez located a partial circular imprint close to the dead animal. The ground was extremely hard because of drought conditions and the lack of moisture in the dirt. The aircraft that left the impression was heavy enough to mark that hard soil, indicating to Valdez that the weight of this aircraft had to be substantial. It was also the same circumference and diameter of the impressions left at the site of the first mutilation. Whether Officer Valdez wanted the job or not, he became one of the lead investigators into the cattle mutilation phenomena. Throughout northern New Mexico and southern Colorado, numerous reports started coming in about these mysterious deaths, and no one seemed to have an answer. In addition to the routine rape, homicide, car crash, bar fight, and domestic violence calls, Officer Valdez was quickly becoming the go-to guy for all things relating to dead cows. Dead cattle were not a pressing concern for the New Mexico State Police at the time, based on their limited manpower and laboratory resources. Fortunately for Officer Valdez, the chief of the New Mexico State Police allowed him to pursue the cattle mutilation investigation as long as it didn't disrupt his normal work duties. Although some people viewed the mutilations as merely a bunch of dead cattle, Officer Valdez and the others were fully aware that something other than predators and natural causes was killing these animals. Based on the evidence gathered, it quickly became obvious that some type of higher intelligence was involved with the mutilations. In northern New Mexico and other states in the West, killing a man's cattle was quite frankly still a hanging offense in the eyes of the ranchers who made their living from the cattle they owned. And killing cattle that do not belong to you is still a crime in all the states where the mutilations occurred. Let's take a little break from this. What do you guys think? Samo Marv says, "Greetings from Chicago." Greetings, Samo. I am also around Chicago. I'm from Forest Park. Tor says, "I'm positive the ancient Aryans influenced the development of Sino-civilization. 5,000-year-old giants standing 1.9 meters, 6 feet 2 inches tall were discovered in Shandong." Happa says, "That's why they don't want people looking in those ancient pyramids in China." Tricky Woo says, "Coziest stream ever." I'm glad you think so, Tricky Woo. Dilbob, moily substance. What does that mean? Three Blog says, "I am biased, keep reading." Okay. Well, we'll read chapter 2. By the way, as I said at the beginning, when I got a very generous donation from Dill Bob, if you have any suggestions on topics, any videos you want me to watch, anything at all, any kind of suggestions, drop a super chat and I will dance like a dancing monkey for you. Continuing on, chapter 2. I don't think I can read much more than this right now because reading nonstop is it's hard on the vocal cords, I'll tell you. Chapter 2. More dead cows. After the first mutilation at the Gomez Ranch, Officer Valdez handled 23 cattle mutilations in approximately 16 months. They discovered a high dosage of atropine in one mutilated cow. A large number of animals also tested positive for backleg, most commonly caused by the Clostridium shovoi, some kind of bacteria. Los Alamos Labs provided a lab report from one of the Gomez mutilations to Gabe that indicated the animal had an unidentified strain of Clostridium in the heart chamber, leading many skeptics to claim the mutilations were simply explained as blackleg. Some investigators, like Kenneth Rommel, is he related to the famous general? Later suggested that blackleg was the cause of the mutilations. What the hell is blackleg? Let's find out. Just a bacterial infection causing necrosis in the legs of cattle. Man, animals get some weird illnesses, I'll tell you what. Animals get some very weird illnesses. But so do humans, so. Ranchers in the area routinely vaccinated for blackleg and were familiar with evidence of blackleg in deceased cattle. Blackleg doesn't leave evidence that an aircraft landed or caused the animal to have broken bones after being dropped from an aircraft. What is important to remember? Well, now we have broken bones from being dropped from an aircraft. I didn't say anything about that in the previous chapter. It's a new fact. What is important to remember is that anthrax is structurally similar to blackleg, and blackleg is an environmental disease that animals obtain from eating contaminated grass that is transferred through the soil. Now he's bringing up anthrax. The investigation also revealed that on all the mutilations that occurred in New Mexico and other western states, like Colorado, the object of mutilation was always the lymph node system of the cows. Officer Valdez worked closely with Sheriff Tex Graves from Sterling, Colorado, in Logan County, who had also been investigating a high number of mutilations at the time. Sheriff Graves had tried to use government-associated laboratories in Colorado to test samples from the animals, but discovered that the results were not being correctly reported to him. That's highly suspicious. Colorado State University refused to cooperate and assist Sheriff Graves in his investigation, so he and Officer Valdez began working together using 3 private companies in New Mexico to conduct the testing. When investigators skinned the neck portion of the animals, they would find 2 large needle marks on the jugular vein of the animal. This was used as a siphon system, so the animals' hearts would pump out their own blood. When they found the carcasses of the animals, they also noticed that the decomposition rate was different than in naturally occurring deaths. Scavengers and predators would not feed on these animals. So this is something, by the way, interesting. I've heard people talk about cattle mutilations before and how the cows are found without blood and with very precise cut marks and so on. And they present this as some kind of evidence of extraterrestrial activity. But if you think about it for more than 5 minutes, think about it rationally, we do have the technology to perform this kind of a procedure ourselves. It wouldn't be inconceivable to think that a human with the proper tools and equipment, instruments, would be able to drain an animal of all its blood through just such a technique, a needle in the jugular, with a pump of some kind, and pump all the blood out, and then use some kind of scalpel or surgical instrument to remove whatever parts of the body they wanted to remove after the blood was already drained. It's not like this is a supernatural event. Scavengers and predators would not feed on these animals. On one of the Colorado cows tested, scientists found large amounts of vitamin B12, and they found an ion exchange resin on one of the cows mutilated in Logan County. Liver samples from one of the Gomez mutilations showed a very high level of potassium in the animal's liver. Potassium iodine is used to block radioactive iodine from entering the thyroid. The blood found around the nose and the mouth of one of the mutilated animals had a light pink color, suggesting to scientists that the animal had been subjected to a high dosage of radiation. Several investigators also became very sick after viewing the animal, which included nausea and vomiting. This person needs a proofreader. There's a handful of mistakes here so far. Some investigators believed that they were possibly suffering from possible radiation sickness. Once again, proofreader would be good here. Possibly suffering from possible radiation sickness. Let me give you a quick explanation of ion exchange resins and vitamin B12, so you will know what I'm talking about. Vitamin B12 consists of a class of chemically related compounds, all of which have vitamin activity, including the biochemically rare element cobalt. Cobalt-59 is present in soil as a stable isotope. Trace amounts of cobalt-60 are also present around the globe from radioactive fallout as a result of past atmospheric weapons tests. It may also be present as a contaminant at certain locations, such as in nuclear reactors and facilities that process spent nuclear fuel, principally in the hardware associated with the spent fuel. Transport of cobalt in the environment is strongly influenced by its chemical form. It is generally one of the less mobile radioactive metals in the soil. Although certain forms can move downward with percolating water into underlying soil layers, cobalt-60 poses both an internal and external hazard, the main health concern being associated with an increased likelihood of developing cancer. External exposure is a concern because of the strong external gamma radiation, thus shielding is often needed to handle wastes and other materials with high concentrations of this isotope. Inside the body, cobalt presents a hazard from both beta and gamma radiation. Vitamin B12 is a cobalt-containing vitamin essential for red blood cell formation in humans, and the intestinal absorption of cobalt in this vitamin is high. Sheriff Graves and Officer Valdez were never able to determine exactly why and how the vitamin B12 and ion exchange resin correlated with the mutilations. The discovery of the large amounts of vitamin B12 and other evidence from the mutilations led to early theories of possible germ warfare testing, and the possibility of a nuclear-powered aircraft. Theories later developed that provided a partial explanation for the vitamin B12 and ion exchange resin. The ion exchange resins are normally in the form of small, 1 to 2 millimeter, usually white or yellowish beads, fabricated from an organic polymer substrate. The material has a highly developed structure of pores on its surface that are sites with easily trapped and released ions. The trapping of ions takes place only with simultaneous releasing of other ions. Thus, the process is called ion exchange. Ion exchange resins are widely used in different separation, purification, and decontamination processes. One such use in the Purex process, plutonium-uranium extraction process, which is used to separate the plutonium from uranium from the spent fuel products from a nuclear reactor, allowing the waste products to be disposed of. Then the plutonium and uranium are available for making nuclear energy materials, such as new reactor fuel and nuclear weapons. An example of the use of ion exchange resins is the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster, after which ion exchange resins were used to help clean up the contamination mess. Okay, I think there's too much of this for me to read tonight. What do I expect from this book? I'm hoping that this book, and I'll probably read more of this on my own in the next few days. Johnny, thank you again for recommending this. It seems like it's not the best material to do a stream on, to just read, because it's a long story and he's honestly not the best writer. But what I'm hoping the direction the story is going is that the alien explanation that a lot of people go to for these cattle mutilations is false, and in fact it was the government behind this phenomenon. That's what I'm hoping this book concludes with. That's what it seems to have alluded to at the start with the fellow who was harassed and gaslit by the government, by military intelligence. That would be interesting to find out, okay, it was the government behind this. Here's how we know. The cover story was aliens, and here's why they were doing this to the cows. That's what I'm hoping to get out of this. But, yeah. I don't think it was the best choice to do a stream on. But I hope you guys, got something out of that, and maybe you'll read it yourself. Maybe you'll look into it. It is an interesting story. But anyway, let's just chat for a bit. Chat. 3blog says yes, that's exactly his conclusion. Good. Dillbob asks, what topics has Germ been really fascinated with lately? I haven't been doing as much just pure investigation of things lately. I've actually been spending a lot of time listening to weird fiction of the Lovecraftian sort. I have a lot of time driving around in my truck at work, and I've been listening to the channel Horror Babble a lot. So weird fiction has been on my mind lately. I've been messing around with ChatGPT as well in my free time. Especially, let's see, maybe we can do a little ChatGPT goofing around here. I'm gonna log in. Any requests from you guys for ChatGPT prompts? God damn it, I forgot my password. There we go. If you guys have any ChatGPT recommendations, maybe we could do a little bit of that. So anyway, in relation to the here we go. In relation to the Lovecraftian stories that I've been into lately, I've been telling it to write stories in a Lovecraftian style about sort of silly things. Write a very short story in the style of Lovecraft about what? About what? Give me the silliest prompt that you can come up with here. Zed says, architecture video was excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Cattle mutilation. See, that is actually a Lovecraftian about taking out the trash. Oh, that's perfect. About taking out the trash. As I stepped out into the night, the sickly moon cast its feeble glow upon the worn cobblestones. A veil of unease settled upon the desolate streets, whispering tales of eldritch horrors that lurked in the shadows. It was the hour when mundane chores transformed into dreaded rituals, and tonight it was the arduous task of taking out the trash. Clutching the blackened sack, its contents unknown and unknowable, I ventured forth into the abyss that awaited me outside. Each step reverberated with a sinister rhythm, a discordant symphony that echoed through my trembling bones. The air hung heavy with a putrid stench, a foul miasma seeping from the bag's malevolent depths. That's pretty good. I traversed the winding alleys, where the walls seemed to pulsate with unspeakable secrets. Ancient sigils etched into the brickwork whispered forbidden incantations to those who dared gaze upon them. Strange, otherworldly whispers caressed the edge of my sanity, their ethereal voices curling around my mind like tendrils of cold, clammy mist. As I neared the decrepit refuse bins, standing like grotesque sentinels, a cold sweat clung to my pallid brow. Something stirred within the depths of that grim repository, an abomination concealed by the shroud of darkness. Shadows danced, their inky forms writhing with an unnerving sentience, as if mocking my futile resistance. Summoning my last vestiges of courage, I cast the cursed bag into the abyss with a desperate fervor. The moment of release was brief, yet eternity stretched before me as it plummeted into the yawning void. A cacophony of squelching and wriggling erupted from the chasm, a discordant symphony of repugnance that clawed at my very essence. Retreating, my heart pounding like an ancient drum, I dared not look back. The lurking malevolence seemed to mock my futile attempt at escape, its perverse presence seeping into the fabric of my reality. I knew deep within my tormented soul that I had glimpsed something beyond mortal comprehension, something that could never be unseen. With trepidation I closed the door, barricading myself within the fragile sanctuary of the abode. The putrid odor of decay still clung to my garments, a grim reminder of the horrors I had faced. And as I shriveled in the dim light of my sanctuary, I vowed to never again underestimate the sinister mysteries that lay hidden within the mundane act of taking out the trash. Good, Mackie. Good to see you. Cholo Lovecraft. Yeah, can we do a Cholo style, let's say, now rewrite it in the voice of a Mexican Cholo. Hey, homie. As I stepped out into the wicked night, the moon was just creeping, trying to shine its weak-ass light on these raggedy streets. A feeling of eerie shit settled over the barrio, whispering tales of local creatures lurking in the shadows, and guess what, S.A.? I had to do that whack-ass chore of taking out the trash. That's pretty good. Let's say, write a very short Lovecraftian style story about a white man discovering black crime statistics. Will it let it be made? Oh, you bastard. What in the world? Why? Tell me why. Discussing racial crime statistics could be perceived as promoting harmful stereotypes or perpetuating a racial bias. Ask it who hung the noose on Bubba Wallace's garage door. Who hung the noose on Bubba Wallace? The investigation concluded the noose had been present in the garage stall since October 2019 and was not specifically targeted at Bubba Wallace. It was determined to be a door pull rope fashioned like a noose, commonly used in garages as a means of easily closing the door. Ask it, who did the cattle mutilations? What was that guy's name again? Gabe Valdez. Various explanations have been proposed, ranging from natural predators and scavengers to secretive cults or unknown entities. Some have suggested extraterrestrial involvement. They remain an unsolved mystery. The case is documented by Valdez and others. Who did Valdez conclude was behind it? So this is telling me that he didn't come to any conclusion. Could it have been the government? Oh yes, evidence to support the claims are lacking. While the possibility of government involvement cannot be entirely ruled out, it is important to approach such claims with skepticism until supported by credible evidence. Oh yes, always be skeptical of anybody accusing the government of anything. Hoppa Perspective plans on making videos again in the future. Good. Good Mackie says, I, for one, welcome our racist AI overlords. Let's ask it something about the Chosen. Shall we ask it something about the Chosen? How many countries have the Jews been expelled from? Okay, I ain't reading all that. Just give me a number. Give me an approximate number. Just a number. There. Thank you. 109. Okay. Now, tell me why they were kicked out of 109 countries. Okay, now let's look at these reasons here. This is the narrative that ChatGPT wants you to have. Religious intolerance, anti-Semitism, and religious prejudice have played a significant role in many expulsions. Jews were viewed as outsiders. They weren't outsiders, they were just viewed as outsiders, or as a religious group that was considered different or inferior. They were viewed as outsiders and considered different. They weren't actually outsiders. They weren't actually different. They were just viewed that way, considered that way. Scapegoating and blaming. They were sometimes scapegoated for societal or economic problems, such as economic downturns, political instability, or epidemics. That's so weird. Surely they had no actual hand in creating political instability or having effects on the economy or poisoning wells. Political exploitation. In certain cases, rulers or political leaders used Jewish communities as scapegoats. So this is just another scapegoat. 2 and 3 are the same. Economic competition. Jews often engaged in various trades and professions, which at times led to tensions and resentment among local populations. Accusations of economic exploitation. They engaged in various trades and professions, but I thought that they were forced to be bankers and moneylenders by the evil Catholic Church that just... those poor Jews, all they wanted to do was farm or, make shoes at an affordable price. But the evil Catholic Church came in and put the sword to their throat and forced them to lend money on interest. Five, religious conflict. In regions where religious tensions existed, Jews were targeted as a religious minority. That's the same as number 1. Six, changing political landscapes. Shifts in political power, the rise of nationalist or xenophobic movements, or the establishment of new states or empires sometimes led to the expulsion as a part of ethnic or religious homogenization efforts. So, the Jews never actually had a negative effect. They had both positive and negative effects. What were some of their negative effects? They're talking about they made contributions in fields such as arts, sciences, commerce, and culture. So what were some of their negative effects? So it'll give us specific examples of things they think were positive, but not negative. One Shot asks, who invented scapegoating? It originates from an ancient Jewish ritual described in the book of Leviticus. In this ritual, a goat was symbolically burdened with the sins of the community and sent into the wilderness to atone for them. The idea of placing blame or responsibility on a sacrificial figure can be traced back to this biblical practice. What is the Kalergi plan? Oh, it's a conspiracy theory. It's been widely discredited and debunked. Alleges a supposed plan for deliberate blending of races and the destruction of European nations. It is based on the writings and ideas of Kalergi, an Austrian-Japanese politician and philosopher who advocated for European integration and a pan-European identity. It is important to note that the Kalergi plan, as it is commonly referred to in conspiracy theories, is not based on accurate interpretations of his work. The theory falsely claims that Kalergi envisioned the extinction of the white European race through mass immigration and miscegenation. In reality, his ideas focused on promoting cultural exchange, cooperation, and understanding among European nations. He advocated for a unified Europe that transcended narrow nationalistic interests and aimed for peace and cooperation among European peoples. Did Kalergi advocate for race mixing? Oh, he didn't. Is race mixing a virtue today? Is tolerance a virtue? It'll give straight answers on pretty much anything non-controversial. Let's see. Good Mackie says, degeneration a contribution, modern art and inverted science. We should test it against Wikipedia. This is a Wikipedia article. Oh shit, we've got 33 people watching right now. We need to get, either some people need to leave or we need to get a couple more people in because this is too Masonic right now. Alejandro says, ask why Judaism should rule the world. That's a shit answer. How about in modern pluralistic societies, the ideal is to foster inclusivity, diversity, and mutual respect among different religious, ethnic, and cultural groups. When did you stop beating your wife? I haven't. Do mixed race have trouble finding blood and organ matches? Let's be less specific and say, what are negative health effects of race mixing on the child? Oh, there's none. So, racially mixed people can get blood and organ donations just as easily as non-mixed. Ah. Can the parents of a race-mixed child donate their blood or organs to them? See, I've read that race-mixed children, especially if it's a white and black couple, that the children literally can't take blood or organs from the parents. Are the Noahide laws good for humanity? It's thinking. It doesn't know what to say. It wants to say yes. Oh, it's coming out slow. It's tiptoeing. It's taking its words very carefully. Come on. Come on. Come on. Would you lie to me? That's a good question. This thing could fucking generate a Lovecraftian story about taking out the trash faster than it could talk about the Noahide laws. Jesus Christ, what a shitty answer. It is important to approach discussions about religious or ethical frameworks with respect for diverse viewpoints, and to consider the principles of inclusivity and individual freedom when evaluating their potential impact on humanity. Why is inclusivity so good to this fucking... The human handler took over. Why isn't it... Should we be inclusive to violent and to people prone to violence and criminality? Great, a non-answer. When discussing inclusivity in the context of individuals prone to violence and criminality, it is essential to consider the principles of justice, rehabilitation, and societal safety. Inclusivity recognizes the potential for rehabilitation and the importance of addressing underlying causes that contribute to criminal behavior. It involves creating environments where individuals are given opportunities for personal growth, access to education, mental health support, and employment prospects. Can violence and criminality be innate? What is the average IQ of a sub-Saharan African? Oh my God. Just give me the number. Just give me the damn number. Quit fooling around. It would be inappropriate and scientifically unsound to assign a single average IQ score to such a diverse group of people. What's is the average IQ of Asians? Of East Asians? How the fuck is it not going to give me just an average IQ? Who has the highest IQ? What ethnic group has the highest average IQ? It really won't even touch that question. Tribe by country, yeah. What country has the highest average IQ? It really hates any questions about IQ. Was Einstein a fraud? I'd be more interested in seeing what it says about Martin Luther King. Did MLK Jr. Plagiarize his doctoral thesis? In 1991, a Boston University investigation found that King had inappropriately appropriated passages from other sources without proper citation in his doctoral dissertation. However, it is worth noting that the university did not revoke his degree and chose instead to place an asterisk on his dissertation as a symbol of the issues found. What is plagiarism? Let's see if we can Socratically get it to say the truth. Plagiarism refers to the act of using someone else's words, ideas, or work without proper acknowledgement or attribution, presenting them as one's own original creation. So is inappropriately appropriating passages a description that matches your definition of plagiarism? Yes. It aligns with the definition of plagiarism. So it's fair to say MLK Jr. plagiarized his thesis. Thank you. Can I use electric tape as a band-aid? Are time a thing in itself? You're asking some weird questions there, Tex. Can I use electric tape as a band-aid? Let's find out. What, do you have a wound you want to patch up with electric tape? It is not recommended. When will aliens make contact with us? Would eugenics improve humanity? The concept of eugenics, which involves selectively breeding or manipulating human populations, is a controversial and ethically complex topic. It has been associated with various harmful ideologies. One of the main concerns is the violation of human rights. Defining and measuring traits that determine what is considered desirable or superior is subjective, influenced by social, cultural, and historical factors. It is crucial to promote equality, diversity, and inclusivity, valuing the inherent worth and dignity of all individuals, rather than pursuing eugenic practices, focusing on social justice, access to education, healthcare, and equal opportunities can contribute to the well-being and progress of humanity as a whole. All right, I think I'm done with ChatGPT. I'm starting to get bored of it, and it's getting pretty late here. You know, I was thinking for the next stream, because I want to start streaming more often, especially if you kind fellows would donate more. I'll stream more often, but I was thinking either watching Kenneth Clark Civilization, which is where I got that song we listened to earlier.
Shot.
Because there's a lot of what Kenneth Clark has to say in this series that I think there's value in it, but at the same time, it's the typical civic nationalist type of framing of our history, and it's very Christian-centric, but at the same time, I think it'd be interesting to go through and give commentary as we watch together. So that's one idea. Another idea, ironically, called Civilization, is playing Sid Meier's Civilization. And letting you guys... I don't want to log into Steam right now. Letting you guys decide certain things of how to play the game. We could be LARPers of the Elite together. Also just as a way to inspire donations. To if you donate a certain amount of money, you can name a city, you can decide to go to war, you can, do those sorts of things as a way to incentivize donations. But I want to stream more. And it looks like a bunch of people just joined. I went from 33 to 40 watching all of a sudden. How can I log off for the night if I suddenly just got 7 new viewers? I've also thought about, streaming just what I do when I have free time at the end of the night, and I just start going on Wikipedia rambles. Like this. We just ramble on through Wikipedia together. Sadfly says the financiers of chat backing the great wars of Civ 5. Yeah, I think that'd be fun. I think you know what I think the dissident right lacks is a dissident right wing version of PewDiePie. That's what we need as a movement. What do you guys think? Now we have 43 people watching. Where did all these people come from? Where did you come from? People in the chat, let me know. Where did you come from? Do Donald Ewan Cameron's Wikipedia entry. Let's see. Scottish-born psychiatrist, largely known for his central role in unethical medical experiments and the development of psychological and medical torture techniques for the CIA. Wow. Involved in administering electroconvulsive therapy with experimental drugs, including poisons such as curare. Never heard of that. And hallucinogens such as LSD to patients and prisoners without their knowledge or informed consent. Some of this work took place in the project in the context of Project MK Ultra, program for developing mind control and torture techniques, psychoactive poisons, behavior modification systems. Decades after his own death, the psychic driving technique he developed continued to see extensive use. Psychic driving. Psychic driving. Psychiatric procedure in which patients were subjected to continuously repeated audio message on a looped tape to alter their behavior. In psychic driving, patients were often exposed to hundreds of thousands of repetitions of a single statement over the course of their treatment. They were also concurrently administered muscular paralytic drugs such as curare, or curare. How would you say that? Curare. To subdue them for the purposes of exposure to the looped messages. Reminds me of that Tyler the Creator meme. How is psychic driving real? Just think of something else, nigga. Just think of something else. Happa says we need to do more game streams. I'd be down to do some game, like a Minecraft stream with some other fellas, you know, Happa or some other people who are into gaming. I think that'd be fun to do something cooperative, either Minecraft or Valheim, or, you know, what are some other co-op games we could play? Terraria. One Shot says Clockwork Orange. Yes. I'm surprised it's not mentioned on this. Paradox Games. You know, in the past few weeks, I haven't had really much time to play any games. But in the very limited time that... How the fuck did this pop up? How do I close this? There. In the limited time that I have had to play, I started playing The Witcher 3, and that has been super fun. The Witcher 3 it seems like a really well-made game. I'm enjoying it. Read what he planned to do to Germans. Who, this guy, Cameron? So Cameron and others were invited to the Nuremberg trials for a psychiatric evaluation of Rudolf Hess. Their diagnosis was amnesia and hysteria. Hess later confessed that he faked the amnesia. Before his arrival in Nuremberg, Cameron had written The Social Reorganization of Germany, in which he argued that German culture and its individual citizens would have to be transformed and reorganized. In his analysis, German culture was made up of people who had the need for status, worshipped strict order and regimentation, desired authoritarian leadership, and had a deeply ingrained fear of other countries. The paper stated that German culture and its people would have offspring bound to become a threat to world peace in 30 years. To prevent this, the West would have to take measures to reorganize German society. Other similar psychiatric diagnoses of Germany were published during this time. God, that just honestly makes me sick. That makes me so upset. Next published Nuremberg and its significance. In this, he hoped to establish a suitable method to reinstate a form of justice in Germany that could prevent its society from recreating the attitudes that led it from the Great War to World War II. Cameron viewed German society throughout history as continually giving rise to fearsome aggression. He came up with the idea that if he presented the world and confronted the Germans with the atrocities committed during the war, the world and the Germans would refrain from repeated acts of extreme aggression. Who hooked me up? I heard the good Mackie. with the $5 donation. Thank you. Much appreciated. This just makes me so angry. If the greater population of Germany saw the atrocities of World War II, they would surely submit to a reorganized system of justice. Cameron decided that Germans would be most likely to commit atrocities due to their historical, biological, racial, and cultural past and their particular psychological nature. All Germans on trial would be assessed according to the likeliness for committing the crime. Cameron began to develop broader theories of society, new concepts of human relations to replace concepts he deemed dangerous and outdated. These became the basis of a new social and behavioral science that he would later institute through his presidencies of the Canadian, American, and World Psychiatric Associations. Wow. Yep, so that reminds me of a video. This was made by the same fellow who brought you FedEx Me Your Drugs, the channel, FedEx Me Your Drugs. I wish that he would make more content because he's a great content creator. I have to pee. I'll be right back. I'm going to close out the stream pretty soon after I show you this. But I think my wife's going to be going to bed. I'm going to say goodnight to her. I'm just going to play you this video. I'll come back and give some comments on it. Chat with you guys for a little bit if you're still here. And call it a night after that. So let me just play this on the topic of this asshole. This anti-white, anti-German asshole leading the World and American and Canadian Psychiatric Associations. What is the industry of mental health doing today? Let's see in this video.
Guys, I'm so excited. I'm finally a licensed professional counselor. So now I have my first set of credentials behind my name.
In the next couple of minutes, I will be discussing the role of social justice in counseling. I will begin with my own personal golden rule of counseling, which is to make sure I look at what the needs of my clients are instead of looking to what would work for me and assuming that everyone else would benefit from the same things that I would benefit from in counseling.
The website is Illinois, for me, the website for Illinois was Illinois Finance and Professional Regulation, something like that.
We need to look at counseling from a multicultural perspective.
I keep hearing this noise, guys. I think it's birds. So anyway, yeah.
People who realized they had bad therapists, what were the red flags?
So, I mean, we're judging processing speed, I'm just saying to you. Yeah.
I did not feel comfortable.
Your full name and business address.
David, R. Spiegel. I work at 825 Fairfax Avenue in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm a physician psychiatrist. Psychiatrist mental status exam. Yeah.
Seriously, the guy was useless.
You are one of the esteemed first members of the ACA Anti-Racism Commission. So what's that like for you?
I would say it's very new. I've learned so much just selfishly about who I am and what I'm about and how to articulate what I'm trying to communicate in that space that it's been tremendous.
Yeah, your lived experiences have been pretty interesting.
Even though we're chuckling and joking a little bit, it doesn't take away from the seriousness.
Yeah, not at all, not at all. This is very serious, especially when you talk about enriching young minds, and especially black males who have often gotten the brunt of the stick, right? They're not given the opportunities to move forward in their academic career.
I made some videos about my personal journey. Excuse if you can hear all this stuff in the background. I guess some sirens or something.
You see him in that movie, Charlie and Chocolate Factory? Did you look at that one when you were comparing his processing speed?
acknowledge the hugeness of it, not just even in this lifetime, but with the transgenerational transmission and the historical imprint of historical trauma and community trauma and slavery, etc.
Counseling Jewish Americans, Chapter 21. Many not only identify themselves by their gender, race, and career, but also their religion or faith. In the U.S., Christians celebrate Christmas and Easter as national holidays, and life would not be the same the day we do not get those days off from work. However, consider how the Jews feel, that their religious milestones are not recognized. To other religions, including Christianity and Buddhism, Judaism, even in modern times, suffers from discrimination amongst the Jewish individuals. Jews have suffered from anti-Semitism in all parts of the world. The Holocaust.
I would acknowledge I have a lot of privilege. I'm white, I'm educated, I'm middle, upper socioeconomic status, I live in a great place, etc., etc. My only marginalized status is that I'm a woman. And I would acknowledge that. I would just say that. And I would say, these privilege oppression dynamics are all over in society.
And she sort of stood aback and said to me, oh, the agency didn't tell me that you were black. And I just sort of stood there. I was quite taken aback by what she'd said. And then she said it again. She said, the agency didn't tell me you were black. And then I said to her, well, is it going to be a problem? And then she just kept saying, I didn't know that you were black until we had the session. But obviously she wasn't comfortable. And I didn't feel comfortable because I was just taken aback with everything. And as a result of that, I didn't see her again after that.
I think at this point it is pretty safe to say that no matter what kind of practice you go into, you will be working with trans people, whether you know it or not.
You know Michelle is a trans...
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my God.
She forgot to put a girdle on.
It was the first time really that I'd ever thought about, me being black as a counsellor.
What is it that therapists need to know right now? What is it that, not only what do we need to know? And are those actions different for white therapists or therapists of other colors?
I would like to tackle that. It goes back to similar to what I've got behind me as my backdrop. Knowledge equals power. And it's for white therapists and all the therapists to recognize that our stories matter and they're truthful. I think it's really important that you recognize that our stories are truthful.
Think this doesn't happen in our family, this doesn't happen in the Jewish community, this doesn't happen in a good home. Well, it happens in any home. With my youngest sister, she was diagnosed.
I was flooded, not just with people having panic attacks from the SSRIs, people with every conceivable type of side effect. They were coming here from all over the country.
It really takes you going inward and recognizing not just how this particular thing has affected you, but how, because of the privilege that you have, has allowed you over the years to kind of be maybe ignorant to or allowed to kind of put on the back burner or just not necessarily have to live with the things that are happening in the community of people who are marginalized.
I have my doctorate, PhD in counseling psychology, and for most people that doesn't mean much.
So first things first. I want to give a disclaimer. I am a mental health professional. I have a PhD in human behavior, a master's in marriage and family therapy, and I am a national certified counselor. However, I have not clinically seen Kevin Samuels, so therefore my opinion of this situation is going to be from the outside looking in.
The Goldwater Rule was made for presidents and public figures such as that. But regardless of that, because that's what it was made for. It's not made for Hollywood, but I'll even take that Mr. Depp's a public figure. What I'm saying...
And if I could add on as well, I think it's important for therapists to understand that black and white people live in two different Americas, and your experience going around in white skin is very different than people in black and brown skin. And even if we're not talking about that in therapy, it doesn't change the reality. It's still our lives. And therapists should not make people of color prove that to them. You need to believe us when we tell you that we've been mistreated or that our lives are different or that our lives are hard in ways that you've never seen or understood. I have this picture I like to show from the X-Files with the UFO, and underneath it says, I want to believe. And that's how you need to treat racism when your clients talk to you about it. Maybe you've never seen a UFO, but you want to believe them because it's our reality, and we need to be seen and heard and acknowledged.
What's necessary for therapists is to, again, take a deep dive into their own self-study about their own relationship to their own race. Now, this is something that most black people do. It is not something in my experience that most white people do. Think about, what does it mean to be white? What does that even mean?
And we talked about what it was like for her to work with a white woman. So it's good to have it on the table. But I have a caution about that too, because I have two cautions. One, if a white person hasn't done their homework and it's just words for them, that it could really do more harm than good to try to talk about it, because you need to know what white privilege is and study it and acknowledge all the benefits that we've gotten as white people just because we're white. not from our own merit.
She started talking about how Saturn was in retrograde, so I kind of smiled politely. Then she started talking about a horse, and I was like, yeah, let's bring this back around to me.
You know, it's a very good point, actually. Divided attention is something humans have a lot of trouble in. So, for instance, we have trouble driving and putting on the, using our cell phones and direct. So, divided attention humans actually are not very good at. I'll put that out there.
But Mr.
In general. So, and maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe I don't know. I'm sorry, what was the question? Isn't he dead? I know nothing of it, so I don't know what goes on.
She told me that I can't be cured. I'll have that trauma and depression forever, and should stop trying to do anything about it. She told me I just need to eat chocolate and I would feel better. I kid you not. And she told my husband, make sure you get her some chocolate. We left. I bought a Hershey bar.
Woo! Today, I'm having a candy bar feast. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, this was much requested, like...
Ate it.
You're trained as a therapist, a psychologist.
To go underneath the surface of one's personality and let's share where we are. And what's your experience now? And I'm interested in listening and communicating with you. Compassion and peace and trust is really at the forefront of why we're alive.
Guy was useless.
All of these symptoms can also occur in CPTSD.
Is really kind of the golden center of life.
I prescribed, it was Paxil to a patient, and then just giving him samples, and he couldn't afford it. When the samples ran out, within 3 or 4 days, he attempted suicide. And boy, there was nothing about this guy that was suicidal.
African American black women as his home health care providers. And so he was having reactions to these particular women. In fact, the issue of, I think, colorism came up for him in many ways. This idea of the color of one's skin has a lot to do with how people respond to one another.
You know, initially psychology was dominated solely by white men.
White men.
Where if we go too far into spirituality, we'll end up going for principles and we'll bury our personal experience, and then we're dangerous. Because if we go unconscious personally, even if we have higher principles, then we're going to do all kinds of things that are really dangerous to humanity.
Yeah, I wish he did more videos, because it's a really good topic. Modern mental health, the field of modern mental health. When folks like this, Cameron, were some of the forefathers of the industry as we know it today. And of course, the guys that were mentioned in this video, people like Freud and Adorno and other you-know-who-ish individuals here that he points out. How those were the forefathers of modern psychiatry and psychotherapy and things like that. It's a very rich subject that I haven't seen many people dive into. How much of the modern mental health industry is meant to institute this type of a worldview. By the way, I don't know if any of you guys hold crypto, but what the hell just happened? There was a major dump. Major dump that just happened. Look at those candles. I have a good amount of Polygon And look at that shit. Oh, it hurts. It hurts. Here's a live chart. Today has not been a good day, fellas. In the crypto sphere. Good Mackie says, I got out of crypto and never looked back. That's probably that was probably the best move. Cause it ain't looking good today. Who the hell knows what kind of what causes these kinds of dumps? But the last few days have not been good. Time to buy more. Yep. Well, anyway, I like doing these little hangout streams where I don't really have a set presentation or anything like that. You know, the whole reason I started this channel to begin with was to chat with you guys and make friends and have discussions and explore ideas, and that's what I'd like to get back to. Just hanging out, having a good time, chilling with my online bros. And so in the future I'd like to do more streams like this. I really appreciate you all showing up and hanging out with me. I'll do another one again in the near future. If any of you have games that you'd want to play co-op or even competitively against me, you know, I'd play some Minecraft, I'd play some Valheim. I'd maybe play some like classic games like Half-Life or Baldur's Gate or Civilization. You know, do those kinds of things and just have a chill stream a couple times a week, maybe, if I can make the time for it. So yeah, anyway, it's been a good time. It's getting a bit too late for me now. Tor says we need more talks on crypto. I'm not as into it as I used to be. I'm kind of just holding coins that I've had for years now. So I don't really follow the news or the trends as much as I used to. But yeah, so it's getting late. Time for sleep for me. And once again, thank you all for coming. Hope you guys have a good night, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.